What does it really take to film inside a £6 million country house and keep it standing? The surprising answer: a delicate dance between storytelling, conservation, and a checklist so strict that even shoes are chosen to protect a staircase that can sing. Today, we're stepping through the doors of the real homes behind Downton Abbey to uncover how history becomes a film set, how those sets pay for the history that inspires them, and how a single mistake can threaten a priceless object. Across 6 seasons and 3 films, Downton Abbey leaned on the National Trust and a network of historic estates to give the Crawley family a world that looks and feels real. The National Trust is Europe's largest conservation charity. It protects wild coastlines, rolling countryside, and hundreds of historic houses filled with rare collections. Why does that matter for a period drama? Because every time a production rents one of these locations, the fees go straight back into conservation, repairing roofs, restoring plaster, treating woodwork, and keeping these places open. The screen gets beauty and authenticity. The places get funded care. It's a loop that keeps both worlds alive. This partnership also sets a high bar. Crews must plan how many people enter, where cables run, which rooms can be lit, and what happens if an accident occurs. Insurance is only the last safety net. The first is smart preparation. Most damage doesn't happen under the lights during a scene. It happens in the busy hours before and after, when equipment is moved, walls are brushed by flight cases, or a table is shifted an inch too far. So productions work with conservators to decide what stays, what gets covered, and what needs to leave the room entirely. Sometimes the answer is simple: those objects never meet the crew. The love for real places shaped Downton's look from the start. One famous example is Byfleet Manor in Surrey, known on screen as the Dower House, the sharp, elegant home of Violet Crawley, the Dowager Countess of Grantham. The real house, a 17th century gem, once hit the market at $395 million with additional parcels, drew international attention, and ultimately sold to a UK-based buyer for around $6 million. Why the appeal beyond television fame? Houses like this are rare. They weave together age, craftsmanship, and a setting that feels lifted from a painting. Agents weren't surprised it went under offer within 12 weeks. Was the buyer a Downton fan? No one said. But the show has a way of turning viewers into would-be owners of history, at least in their imaginations. Another favorite returns in the grand finale, Basildon Park in Berkshire. Its reception rooms, the hall, the dining room, the drawing room, and that distinctive octagon room with deep enveloping color, appear again after earlier star turns. Basildon Park served as Grantham House, the Crawleys' London residence, playing a central role in the 2013 Christmas special with Lady Rose's debutante ball, then again in the series 5 finale for her wedding to Atticus Aldridge. Why keep coming back? Because the building answers a difficult demand: grandeur that matches the character's status, yet rooms that still feel alive. Basildon Park has both: elegant lines and surfaces that hold the camera's gaze. The finale also introduced another showstopper, Claydon House, standing in as the interior of Petersfield House. A single moment captures why these locations matter. Lady Mary's entrance descends an elaborate staircase that locals call the Singing Staircase, its refined metalwork said to echo like rustling wheat. It's beautiful and fragile. Crews needed expert supervision to make every step safe. The solution included quiet adjustments, soft-soled shoes when feet were in frame, careful load limits, and a mapped-out path for actors and equipment. Tiny choices, big consequences. Every touch point was measured because a historic staircase isn't just a backdrop. It's an artifact. But even with rules, surprises happen. On the very first day of filming at Highclere Castle, the real-life setting for Downton Abbey's main house, a turquoise chest belonging to the Countess of Carnarvon was accidentally knocked. Specialists rushed in to repair it. The lesson sticks. The margin for error is thin, and the response must be immediate. That's why property owners insist on strong, tailored contracts, insurance that suits the risk, and site plans that anticipate the ordinary things that cause extraordinary damage. Where trucks park, how cables cross thresholds, where crew members smoke, how doors are locked, and which exit routes remain open. It's not glamorous, but it's the difference between a smooth shoot and a headline. So what exactly do filming conservators do? Think of them as translators between two worlds. They listen to what the production wants: cranes, dolly tracks, a certain angle that requires moving a table, then translate that into what the building can safely allow. They approve some requests, adjust others, and gently refuse the rest. They know which objects should be removed, which surfaces need padding, and how much vibration a floor can take. They understand who does what on set, from props to riggers to the first assistant director, so they can place people and equipment where they do no harm. They supervise during the day to keep contracts honored and solve last-minute puzzles without risking the fabric of the house. They help with prep and wrap, check for pests or mold on incoming props, and, crucially, make sure nothing is left behind that could imprint on a historic floor or a silk wall. A typical shoot in a historic house breaks into 3 stages. First, prep. Sets are built, props arrive, surfaces are protected. Felt pads go under furniture. Rugs cover traffic lanes when allowed. Any carpentry, temporary flats, or scaffolding is done under close watch. Next, the shoot itself. The first assistant director runs the day, the location manager serves as a constant point of contact, and the call sheet guides timing. Crews move quietly in sensitive rooms. Doors to off-limits areas are locked or clearly marked, but emergency exits remain clear. Finally, strike. Everything is removed. The house is checked, and the site is returned to the caretakers in at least the condition it was found. Does it always happen in neat order? Not always. Prep can overlap with shooting. Strike can begin in one room while another still rolls. That's why clear roles matter. Art and props are the main teams you'll see in these spaces, but construction and rigging join when flattage or scaffolds appear. Yet even with the best plans, some rooms are simply too valuable or too vulnerable to host filming. Then the production recreates them on sound stages. That was true again for the finale. While Highclere Castle supplied many grand, familiar rooms, bedrooms and servants' quarters were built, just as in earlier productions. Downstairs spaces, thick stone walls, long corridors, the workhorse kitchens inspired by real houses, were designed to feel almost monochrome, a deliberate contrast to the warm, saturated world upstairs. For this story, a smoking room became a music room on a stage, its palette rebalanced with blue damask walls and patterned drapery to lighten the mood. Meanwhile, certain treasures at Highclere stayed out of harm's way. A desk once owned by Napoleon was removed before filming. Other pieces, like the red settees in the library, remained where they belonged. Rebuilding that library on a stage would have been wildly expensive, not least because reproducing a vast, centuries-spanning book collection is a project in itself. Costume tells its own story here, and the finale embraces a moment of change. Set in 1930, it moves further into the lines and waistlines of the new decade. Costume designer Anna Robbins, who joined in Season 5, knows how each character wears their history and their present. Silhouettes sharpen. Details shift from Edwardian softness to a cleaner 30s modernity. One red dress stands out, striking enough to feel current even in our time. Color, too, speaks. When Mary feels exposed early on, her palette lightens, catching a vulnerable note. In a memorable reversal, Mary appears in pink while Edith wears deep navy, flipping their usual color codes. The change is quiet but meaningful. It mirrors where they stand with one another and with themselves. Behind the scenes, the writing follows a shape that fans know well. Julian Fellowes refined a multi-threaded style in the wake of Gosford Park, where a layered household taught him how to braid stories, so each person gets a moment that matters. He brought that to Downton from the first episode. Over time, certain figures naturally stepped forward. Mary's arc, in particular, was envisioned as central from the beginning. In crafting the farewell, Fellowes developed the draft in 3 movements. Initial conversations to agree on the heart of the story and where each character would travel. A quieter phase to write. Then a final pass with the director, Simon Curtis, to refine until the pieces clicked. That team effort holds a simple idea at its core. The story is about change. Between 1912 and 1930, the ground under families like the Crawleys shifted. Titles still mattered, but money, work, technology, and politics redrew maps. Survival meant adaptation. And if adaptation required a library to double as a set, or a staircase to be treated like a violin, then that too was part of the story, a world making room for a new one. Curiously, the very things that make these homes filmable also keep them alive. Location income pays for the quiet labor no one notices on screen. Lime wash that breathes with old walls. Climate control that guards tapestries from damp. Joinery that fixes a window without erasing 200 years of use. Next time a camera lingers on a carved cornice, remember the ledger that backs it up. A location fee, a grant, a donation. These are the small bridges between what we watch and what endures. There's another bridge too, craft to craft. On one side, conservators reading the building. On the other, filmmakers reading the audience. Consider again that singing staircase. Why does it matter? Because it's more than a set of steps. It holds the weight of the house's maker, the language of its materials. Mahogany, ebony, ivory, boxwood, and the wear of centuries. It is a miniature stage, and when a character descends, the moment lands not just because of line and gesture, but because the place itself has voice. Protecting that voice is the job. Hearing it is the gift. So how does a day actually feel on a historic set? It starts early. Trucks arrive on routes approved to keep vibrations low where foundations are known to be sensitive. Crew shoes are clean. Props are checked for pests and moisture. A conservator does a last pass, perhaps reminding everyone that a certain chair should only be moved by lifting, never sliding. The call sheet sets the rhythm. A morning in the hall. A quick turn to the octagon room, a lunch break when sunlight is too harsh. Then an afternoon sequence in the dining room where cutlery placement matters more than most viewers will ever guess. During a reset, a cable runner might ask for a different path across a threshold. The answer is either a new route or a temporary ramp to protect the sill. At wrap, the last checklist is the quietest. Pads removed, floors inspected, air moved through the room to keep humidity steady. The door closes. The house exhales. Some people assume filming in a historic home is all glamour and portraits. In reality, it's rules, tape measures, and patient hands. The glamour arrives later, when the story is cut together and the rooms on screen feel both true and newly alive. That truth builds loyalty. It's why viewers recognize Basildon Park with a small thrill. Why the Dower House feels like a real place where a real person might be reading a letter at this moment. And why a grand ballroom entrance can still make hearts skip. Authenticity earns attention. Care keeps it. By now, we've toured the circle. Places funding preservation, preservation enabling filming, filming shaping the story returning value to the places. It's a compact that works when everyone respects the past while making something for the future. Downton Abbey understood that compact and built a farewell around it. Rooms that remember, characters who evolve, and a crew that knows a £6 million house is not a prop but a partner. That's the secret of filming in mansions like these. The biggest set of all is a living museum. The people who protect it are co-authors. And every scene that feels effortless is actually the sum of 1,000 careful choices. Some visible, most invisible, all essential. If you listen closely, you can hear those choices even now. The hush of soft-soled shoes on an ancient stair. The faint ring of a balustrade that once sang, and a house that, thanks to the work behind the work, will keep telling stories long after the lights go out.